Hello, welcome everyone. We're excited to have you join us for today's LinkedIn Lead Accelerator customer webinar. Today, Kitty O'Connell will walk us through how to develop high-performing content, add creative, and landing pages. Before we start, I want to cover a couple of housekeeping items. You are all muted by default. If you would like to ask Kitty any questions, use the Q&A box to the right, and we'll take time to answer those questions during the Q&A portion following Kitty's presentation. If you want to review this webinar later or share with colleagues, we will be sending a recording of the webinar along with the slides to you via email following the event. Also, one last comment, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at LinkedIn_NKTG. And now, without further ado, I will toss things to you, Kitty.
Great, thank you, Cass. So as Cass mentioned, we're going to be talking about what I think is my kind of favorite couple pieces about LLA, reviewing content, creative, and landing pages. So we're going to start things out by looking at kind of goals first, because I think with any marketing effort, we want to kind of start there, then kind of transition to, what do we actually look at when we're trying to slot in content for LLA. Then finally, looking at how do we get those people to engage with your brand by looking at the creative. And when you do get them to your landing pages, how do we get those names? Finally, we'll kind of end things off with additional best practices, and as Cass mentioned, we'll leave time for Q&A at the end. Perfect. So getting started here, I think it's really important to look at goals, especially for LLA, before you start to get more into the nitty-gritty of specifics around content and creative and landing pages, really taking a step back and saying, okay, what do I want to get out of this program? Really asking yourself that. Because similar to any marketing automation system, there's a lot of different ways that you can slice and dice your LLA program. So you really want to understand what your initial goal is. Do you want to get those net new names? Do you want to increase, the percentage of MQLs? Even more top of the funnel, do you want to just get engagement with your content? Let's say you're using Marketo progressive profiling, and you really want to fill out a lot of those different profiles in your marketing automation system. Once you have a really good idea about, your key points of success, then we can start to look at, okay, who is your target audience? Who is coming to your site that is, the high-value customers, and really going after those individuals. Once we kind of pinpoint that area, we can then look at, okay, what are my goals for this specific audience? What do I want them to take away from this interaction with my brand? Do you, couple things to consider. Do you want them to position your brand top of mind more? Do you want to highlight a specific solution? Are you trying to bring out a point of differentiation? Things like this will really help us navigate what content to slot in at which point in the funnel. Then actually, when we have an idea, we can, of kind of these last three touch points we looked at, looking at the actual content that you have in your wheelhouse. So kind of going on that wheel analogy, I'd say don't reinvent it. Especially for LLA, as I mentioned, it can get as complicated as we want it to. So really understanding, that you have a lot of content in your library and use what you have to start out with. A good place to understand, what is in that library is to keep track of your content. I think I recommend this for every client that I have. If you're not doing this, I'd start today. Really make a master Google Doc, a master spreadsheet of what your assets are, the type that they are, the ebook, white paper, the audience that you're trying to speak to, what the topic might be on, if they were gated or ungated, what part of the funnel, all those different things so that, when you're trying new tactics, when you're trying to strategically position your brand different ways, you don't have to go back and forth, look at, what you've run in the past, look at relevant performance. It's all there, and you can filter and say, okay, I want to look at, material I have for CXOs. You can start to filter that way instead of having to dig through, maybe your server and try and find what you have or find what creative you have. You can all link it here. From there, I'd really benefit, I think, from making those leftovers. So we all know Thanksgiving just happened. Cass and I are both vegetarians, so we don't love turkey sandwiches, but most people do. And I'd really recommend that you take that, what we call here at LinkedIn as big rock content. You know, you have taken the time with your team, whether it was internally or externally, to really, you know, perform or, you know, finalize these longer, bigger pieces of content. Cut those down, make those more digestible, more snackable, so they work for different areas of the funnel and not just, you know, mid to lower funnel. Make them into shorter white papers, data sheets, infographics. I'm sure, you know, most of you on this call have been retargeted or reached with our Sophisticated Marketer's Guide to LinkedIn. It's a longer piece of content. So what we've done here is we've kind of diced that up into many different forms so that it can appeal to a wider audience. From there, you want to look at, you know, content to specifically consider for LLA, and we'll get into this more as it makes more sense in relationship to the funnel, but I've kind of listed out just a laundry list here. But looking at the next slide, when you see actually, you know, where these content pieces fit in relationship to the funnel, this is what you really want to consider and look at. So we know that in the B2B, you know, buyer's journey, people are consuming a lot of content all along the way. So we want to make sure that we're getting in front of people with the right content at the right time for whatever stage they're currently at. When we look at top funnel, you know, this is really awareness, thought leadership. You know, we joke at LinkedIn that, you know, you go into a cocktail party or we're going to our holiday party, you don't, you know, just go up to someone, introduce yourself, and talk only about what you do and what your job is. You ask them about themselves, you warm them up a little bit, and we want to bring that over to LLA. We want to, you know, position things as thought leadership. We want to, you know, not just introduce your brand first, but really introduce the space that you occupy. You know, if someone has gone to your website because they're interested in what you do, let's warm them up and educate them a little bit more on that. Then we look at that mid-funnel, really that education piece where we're looking at analyst reports, we're looking at research reports, longer white papers, when you can start to get a little bit meatier in terms of, you know, what type of content you want to use here. You know, you can have a little bit more, have things be more brand-centric. Then, you know, special offers down at the bottom of the funnel. This is really where you can take the opportunity to use those bottom funnel content pieces, those, you know, ROI calculators, those demos to push depending on where someone is in the funnel. You know, you want to make sure that you're not kind of giving demos to homepage bouncers, but you're really being strategic about, you know, those impressions being served so we can be as efficient as possible. Perfect. So now I'm going to give a real-life example of taking kind of these high-level ideas from, you know, what we're talking about, mapping content to the funnel, and bringing it over to the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions example of LLA. So first starting out at what our goal was, you know, we really looked at, we wanted to feed our email nurture program with net new names. We wanted to kind of fill that funnel, fill those names so that our sales development team could take over and qualify from there. And from that, you know, that really led us to a segmentation that was both by product and a combination of buyer's journey. So we have, you know, we want to have a customized experience. If someone goes to a page about InMail, we want to be able to serve them InMail specific content. So that's what kind of I'm going to walk you through here a little bit. So we have this homepage bouncer stream. What do we know about this audience? Well, we know that they've come to LinkedIn Marketing Solutions and they've left without becoming a known prospect. They didn't go further down into the site. So, you know, what we're going to do here is we're going to serve them a marketer's guide to LinkedIn. This is, you know, still very LinkedIn-centric, but it covers, you know, marketers, which we're assuming these people are for coming to our marketing site, and very specific to LinkedIn. You know, we're taking a step back with this next piece. So if someone doesn't convert on that first wave, we're pushing them down to this executive playbook. not everyone's an executive, but this is super aspirational. We'll see the actual ad we use in a couple of slides here. We're talking about, a 12 steps to becoming an executive social leader, really, high level, not as specific to LinkedIn, but more the space that we occupy. If someone doesn't convert there, we'll push them down to a 5-minute primer on multi-channel nurture. So it's a topical experience or topical theme today in marketing of wanting multiple touch points. It's 5 minutes, so we're kind of giving that high-level, low-friction offer. Finally, we'll end with a thought leadership guide. So, we're going to want to get in front of them again with these really thought leadership, low-friction content pieces because, again, we're mapping that content to the audience. On the reverse side of that, we do have specific product pages where we're saying, okay, LLA specific, someone has gone to a page or a blog about LLA, we want to serve them very specific content to kind of map back to their digital body language. So what we're going to do in the first 2 weeks of the program is we're going to serve them product-specific content around LLA. First an LLA guide, next to success stories about LLA. If they don't convert on this content, then they might have not been ready to convert on product-specific. They might not, even though they visited an LLA-specific page, they might not be ready to convert on that specific content. So we're going to back off in the last 2 weeks of the program, and we're going to serve them, we're going to kind of borrow from our homepage bouncers to serve them the marketer's guide to LinkedIn and to serve them the thought leadership pieces. This is, kind of a strategy of saying, okay, let's get the low-hanging fruit with that product-specific content. If it's too much, we'll back off and try and get them with that thought leadership. So kind of putting that, mapping the content to more of a real-life scenario. Now that, let's say we have our audiences mapped, we have the content that we want to put in front of those folks, now, it's really understanding how do we get that person to engage. What retargeting is kind of disruptive if you think about it. We're trying to get in front of someone, they're doing their web browsing, they're on Facebook, they're on LinkedIn, they're on Forbes or Newsweek.com, and we're trying to get in front of them with a relevant piece of information so that they actually click on it, and we take them out whatever they're doing and send them over to our landing page. So keeping that in mind, we want to develop, really, striking ads. And so here's a couple of points to keep in mind. First and foremost is always think about the audience that you are serving these ads to and getting in front of. Even if you want to, let's say, borrow a piece of content from homepage bouncers versus and slot it over to a more product-specific stream, you might want to speak to that audience differently depending on, because they're lower in the funnel. Next is really remembering to think about that channel relevancy. So think about, where will these ads appear? When you're creating display ads, really understand and create that shape for that creative asset to come across in the best way it can. And we'll also talk about specifically kind of best practices for Facebook and LinkedIn social copy as well. Next here, look at always having that clear, that kind of simple and straightforward call to action. There's a lot going on these web pages, so you want to stand out because your action or your kind of message is really striking, bold, but also very clear, and someone knows exactly what they're going to get if they engage with you. Next is really thinking about both being timely and relevant. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. First is looking at that kind of benefit message. So again, there's kind of 2 points to this. There's one that you can say, okay, I want to be more fact, or I want to come out more with a specific statistic. So an example of this would say increase attention spans 52% with video meetings. That's one way to kind of play this and bring about that benefit message of your product. Another is kind of being a little bit more playful and tongue-in-cheek, which we've seen a lot of, high-tech folks or companies do in the Bay Area of saying, does your API suck? We can help. that kind of isn't typical advertiser language, especially in this space. So you want to think about how you can be different as well when you're kind of bringing up about that benefit message. Next year is looking at being that relevancy, or that timeliness. So looking at urgency. One thing I think you can do, of course, is say things like now, today, in your CTA. But another thing to think about is, and one thing I think our LinkedIn Talent Solutions does really well, is saying something like, recruiting is evolving, are you? So this position's not only are we saying that LinkedIn Talent Solutions is kind of helping shape that evolution in this space, but it's saying, okay, recruiter, you are in this field that is constantly changing, so you need to engage with our brand and learn, why and how you can stay with the times. Lastly here is really thinking about visually being relevant and being striking. I think whether you decide to do that in a playful way or be kind of bold and aggressive, I think you kind of have to commit. And you can play within a certain world, and I'll kind of show you different versions of LinkedIn ads when we're trying to kind of play up one way or another. But I think, no one engages with boring creative, and you want to think about what you engage with and what catches your eye when you're scanning the web, and put yourself in your prospects' kind of shoes there. Perfect. So when we look at actually, over the next couple of slides, we're going to look at LinkedIn examples. This specifically is looking at talent solutions and how our LinkedIn Talent Solutions team uses their LLA program in a really great way, both by mapping their content and their creative messaging to the funnel. So on the left-hand side here, when we look at what they're doing on an awareness and thought leadership play, we're getting in front of someone, our prospects, with this infographic. The infographic is about, the modern recruiter and how it's kind of both sides of the brain are necessary. So we kind of wanted to portray that in a fun way, right? So we're getting in, our brand is still kind of also top of mind, but we don't clearly, we have the small LinkedIn bug on the top left-hand corner. It's not super in your face. And what is, though, is that free infographic yellow button. We're using more kind of light background colors so that yellow button really pops. And again, this is an infographic. It's about talking about the space that we occupy and not necessarily how LinkedIn can change your life. When we look in the middle here, we're seeing this more educational piece. So you'll notice first and foremost that the LinkedIn brand and logo is more front and center here. We're educating people about how LinkedIn can help you kind of position yourself as a modern recruiter, and this guide will help you do that. So we're using that kind of timely and relevant message to get in front of people saying, recruiting is evolving, are you? Download this guide, and find out now. On the right-hand side here, you'll see we're offering to our, prospective clients that have clearly shown that they're ready for a demo, that we're going to give them this free demo to our Talent Solutions product. You'll notice first off that we locked up the LinkedIn logo with the Talent Solutions wording so that you know exactly which business unit you're actually committing to getting that free demo from. It's also in the world of the other ads. We're using the same language, same type of coloring, but it's a little bit more serious because at this point, someone's committed to, they're further down the funnel, they're kind of more aligned to, they know what they're going to get when they click on this free demo. So we kind of want to be a little bit tighter in that message. Perfect. So then when we switch gears a little bit, we'll look at how a couple examples from LinkedIn Marketing Solutions and how we're mapping both the content to the funnel and also that creative messaging. So this is an example from the Homepage Bouncer Creative, the executive playbook that I mentioned earlier. So we're looking at the 12 steps to becoming a social leader. You'll notice, I don't think our CTA button could be any larger, but with all might respect that we want someone to know exactly what to do. It's a very simple ad in terms of coloring. You know, that yellow button stands out in terms of download now. And the LinkedIn brand itself is kind of falling to the background a little bit because we want someone's not ready to really be mid-funnel yet here. They're a homepage bouncer. We want to, you know, position it a little bit higher. I've also listed out other content pieces that work for kind of this homepage bouncer group. I think we've kind of covered that it's more of the top 10 list, or in this case, top 12, the shorter white papers, the infographics. So I'll kind of leave that more as a leave behind to take a closer look at after the webinar here. When we look specifically at middle of the funnel for LinkedIn Marketing Solutions and what we're doing, you'll notice again, you know, we position that LinkedIn, the logo in the top left-hand corner. You know, when we're visually from an eye perspective, we're reading always from that left to the top left to down right. So we want first to start with the LinkedIn logo. Okay, you recognize what it is. From there, even the title here is much more specific to LinkedIn. We're talking about this little big book of LinkedIn advertising. It's more aligned with, or directly correlated with that buyer's interest. We know that they're, you know, they're more engaged. They've gone deeper into the site, so we want to align that offer and also that creative messaging to kind of parallel what they're interested in. Other content pieces that work here, you know, kind of longer ebooks, product reviews, case studies, maybe, you know, I think depending on what stream or what kind of group you're talking to, but research reports, analyst reports, really, really good content here. Finally, when we look at the most engaged for LinkedIn, these could be, you know, either qualified or converted visitors, so someone who maybe they've bounced from our demo page, or you know, they've already converted once, so we want to shoot them over to a more qualified stream where we're giving them lower content offers. You know, this ad, again, similar to the Talent Solutions demo, we're saying LinkedIn Marketing Solutions in that lockup. So it's very clear of who you're engaging with, kind of where you're coming from there. We're saying, you know, very simply, drive leads. It's a little bit more serious, but still in the same world as our other ads. And then again, that, you know, very distinct, very large CTA button of try today with that urgency message. So another thing to consider for LLA, we've looked a lot at different banner ads, right? So we know that LLA, you know, the majority or not, for most of my clients, I'd say, are driving the most post-click actions from our social channels. So, you know, you also want to consider optimizing based on all the channels that you can use for LLA. So first, when we look at creative on this Sophisticated Marketer's Guide to LinkedIn, on the display side, you know, you want to keep in mind of, you know, you have an idea, your creative team or your agency or your designer has an idea for how to bring this ad to life. You want to keep in mind, you know, of making sure that that design works for each individual unit, right? So if you look at the top, those 728 by 90, we've decided to remove this kind of the blue hand with the pearl bracelet and the phone. And this is because it just doesn't really work in this specific ad unit, and that's okay because it's still the same look and feel in the other ads. We're getting the most important parts across, but it's okay that we're kind of leaving out that specific element. But then when we do have the availability in the real estate, we're kind of opening it up. We're able to be a little bit more creative and fun with our messaging. You'll notice that the CTA button, again, super big, super yellow, so that we get someone to click and then convert. On the right-hand side here, you'll see kind of how our Facebook newsfeed and LinkedIn sponsored content come alive in the same kind of content piece. So you can definitely repurpose social ad copy across these two channels. The one major call out, I'd say, one major difference between Facebook and LinkedIn sponsored content currently is that on mobile, when someone is served a sponsored update, actually, depending on where they click on the ad, will change the location of where they're sent to. So you'll notice that our top line for where it says everything you need to know about marketing on LinkedIn, the header above the image is a little bit, fewer characters than on the Facebook side. And that's because when we're in this mobile space, if you someone clicks on that with their thumb or finger, they'll be taken to a mobile company page. So obviously that's not what we want to happen from this ad. We want to send them specifically to, the landing page so that they can actually convert and become a known name in your marketing automation instance. So this is something to consider. Either we recommend using less than 50 characters or eliminating this entirety. One thing that you know too is that you can easily ABC test social ad copy variation to get the best mix. And I'd also recommend, if you're not doing this already, typically if you pull the export report from your LLA account, you'll be able to filter by actions and then by channel, and you can see that likely the majority, maybe 70% or more of post-click actions are coming from your social channels. So to increase the amount that you can actually get in front of these prospects with those high-performing channels, you can slightly tweak your social ad copy, and I'd recommend getting in, up to 4 sponsored content pieces within each wave and up to 2 Facebook newsfeed. And that variation just kind of goes with the specific frequency caps in place. But, any questions on that, I definitely reach out to your account manager or your MAC. Perfect. So looking now at, okay, so you got them to engage with you, you got them to click on your banner or your sponsored update, and now they're back, they're on your homepage, or they're on your landing page. So how do you get them to that final step of becoming a known name? And there's a lot of things to consider here, right? So this is where I think the marketer has the most to gain and the most to lose. So if you think about it and what Lead Accelerator is supposed to do, someone's coming to your website, we're dropping cookies on them, we're finding them wherever they go on the web, and then our job is to try and optimize to the right social channels to bring them back to your site. When they get there, we at LinkedIn can't really control whether they fill out their information, right? And that's why we want to work with you guys to understand and get the best landing page optimizations out there. So a couple things to consider. Visually, you want that ad to pay off when someone clicks to the landing page. Here's an example of LinkedIn Talent Solutions. We saw this part artist, part scientist infographic display ad earlier in the presentation. If someone clicks, they go to this landing page where we have, same type of visual representation of what someone saw from that display ad. We have a clear headline, learn what it takes to be a modern recruiter, download our free infographic. And then here's, I'd say, where a lot of marketers can miss out is having the benefit messages and using that left-hand space of your landing page to really make sure that you're bullet pointing what someone will take away if they download this report. So, and this I think is a perfect example of this. In 5 minutes, learn these 3 things, and then we bullet out each of those 3 things. We're making it super simple for this person to scan that short paragraph with a little bit of background, and then really hold on to what they'll learn from this. Everyone wants to scan a page, so just make it easier for your prospects to do that. Another thing to think about too, we'll talk more about the optimizing your form fill on the next page, so I won't go too far into that right now. Last point here is to think about your navigation. So you want your landing page to be a single purpose. So, I'd eliminate all the hyperlinks that you can. I think one of the biggest misses for marketers is putting your top navigation on your landing pages. So this actually, someone is able to, instead of filling out that form, they're actually able to, get distracted, see something else, click it, and click away, not becoming a known prospect for you. So increase your click-to-conversion rate by eliminating that top navigation, just having, in this case, with the LinkedIn Talent Solutions, we just have a simple black bar with our logo on it and then kind of go into the infographic information. So just, something definitely to consider there. Perfect. So looking at, that optimization registration form, so definitely I think no one wants to fill out a lengthy form, especially if you're on mobile, that's not an optimized experience. So I'd say best practice, we say here if you can get away with it, to have 5 fields in your form fill. Whichever 5 is going to be most important for you and your team. I'd also say that here's a couple examples of clients that have done a really great job of putting, a clear call to action at the top, whether it's download the cheat sheets, register now, find out how IT buyers, etc. They're putting that also right above that form fill, so it kind of, you kind of solidify what that call to action is a little bit more. Another thing to outline here is that you'll notice that the download buttons are also big and beautiful, and they also stand out from the rest of the page. I think this is a really easy optimization that can go a long, long way with your prospects. One thing to note, too, is that Marketo actually reports about a $10 drop in CPL when shortening a form fill from 9 fields to 5. So, if you can get away with it, definitely would encourage you to eliminate any erroneous form fills that you can. However, you'll notice that in the LinkedIn examples I've used, we don't follow our best practices. So a couple things to consider there is that, we know that there are a lot of different people, a lot of different teams that need some information from this form. So if you need to, and we even know that internally, right? So if you need to have more than 5, I'd highly recommend using autofill with LinkedIn. If someone clicks that, their information will automatically populate from their LinkedIn profile. And this will just, really tighten up both the quality of the data and your conversion rate, specifically on mobile. Perfect. So, let's say someone has converted, they filled out the form, now they are redirected to that thank you page. And this is what I would definitely recommend as best practice for this product. So LLA is URL based. So what we're able to do is we're able to create actions associated with specific URLs so that we know that someone has gone to your or completed your form fill if we know that they've gone to your unique thank you page URL. It's also, really helpful for you internally to see, when someone has completed that form fill. A couple things here too to remember is that you can deliver the content via, that additional click, where with this sales solutions example, we're saying download now. And also I think a missed opportunity for some folks that they kind of forget about is that you can link to other information in your thank you page. So for this example, we're linking to requesting a free demo, and we're also linking to the sales solutions blog. So this is an opportunity that, I'm recommending to remove all the other hyperlinks from your landing page. You can put them on your form fill because, you can put them on your thank you page because, we've gotten the name. We already have that information. So now, they can go across the web wherever they want. And if that happens to be on your blog or your demo, that's even better. So let's try and get them in that direction. Perfect. So a couple other things to think about when you're kind of creating your content and your performance for LLA. We've talked about this a lot mapping specific content to the funnel where someone is. So I've highlighted here kind of an example of, we're kind of trying to nurture people slowly through different opportunities, different high-level content, and then we finish off with a contact us form. If I think you try and give your homepage bouncer a contact us form or a free demo right at the first initial nurture, you're not going to be happy, they're not going to be happy. So I think just thinking about, where that person is in their mindset is really, really important for success for you and for the program. Then also thinking about, prioritizing which stream or which wave is going first, not just by the sequence or story that you're trying to tell, but also by what the data is telling you. So, you might have a wave 2 or wave 3 or wave 4 even that's just giving lower impressions per action, higher click-to-conversion rate, total higher number of actions. So let's move it up in the wave so that, we can increase the exposure, the number of impressions that we're serving to that specific wave so that we can increase your total number of actions and reduce that CPL. Perfect. This is really, I think what this product is able to do, a great benefit is you're able to test across the board. You're able to test different audiences, different content, different A/B testing, different creative, which I know we didn't really get into specifically, but I think, you're able to do that so easily with this product that I wouldn't shy away from that at all. So I won't get specifically into other content best practices, verbatim here, but I'll just highlight a couple of things. One thing specifically is that, content can come in a lot of different forms, and your business more than, better than your marketing automation consultant, better than your, AE or AM. So I think, working internally to understand, what content you guys have seen performs best for your audiences, and then testing and working, seeing the data come in is really important. Also, you don't need a ton of information, ton of content to get started. You could definitely start simple, learn from there, see what's coming in, and then adjust accordingly. Lastly here, I think that, you can lean on those social channels, really benefit from serving, those high-performing channels across your audiences and duplicate them to make sure that you're kind of increasing those frequencies. So a few final thoughts here before we open it up for Q&A. Again, really, I can't stress this enough of starting simple. I know we talked about, a lot of different things today, but I think it's super important to look at, what your priorities are, what your goals are, what your bandwidth is, and then, what you need to get live, and then you can optimize and kind of go from there. Another thing to consider is leveraging new content. You're all constantly changing, trying new content, working on new things. Bring that into LLA. If something isn't working like you thought it would, pause it and put in a new piece of content to see if that kind of delivers against what you want to see. Also remember to definitely test and optimize this, as I mentioned previously. This is definitely a living product that, will fluctuate as your top-level programs fluctuate. I think that, we can only retarget the people that are coming to your site. So as those audiences change, so will your LLA program. Finally, give your program time. I think, nothing is overnight, so you do need to wait for that program to ramp up and get to a point where we're nurturing we're effectively nurturing your audience at your, 20% within that contact tier. So, as you ramp up, you'll start to see those CPLs drop. You'll start to see those impressions per action come back down. So really kind of work with your team to understand what that ramp period looks like. Perfect. So I also have just some helpful links that when Cass is able to send out the deck, you can link to just a couple really helpful articles that we have in our help center. I would strongly suggest that you kind of take take 20 minutes one day and look at that help article, look at the Help Center. It links directly from the dashboard, or you can go straight to help.lms.linkedin.com. Really, really great stuff there, so I would highly recommend kind of exploring there. And yeah, I think we can definitely open it up to Q&A and leave some time for that. Okay, so we have one question. My company doesn't have a lot of content. We're just starting out. How will this affect our LLA program? So I think what is important to remember here, as I mentioned, is, starting simple is kind of starting with the best foot forward. You'd want to, with this program, you want to definitely walk before you crawl and run. So we can set up a very kind of simple program that can be extremely successful, and using the content that you have, even creating different creative messaging and getting people to go to the same landing page is something I've definitely done with clients and seen great performance. Perfect. So if my design team has little bandwidth for ad variations, what kind of options are there? So this is a great call out. So we do have, as you can tell with LLA, one wave or one content piece we'd want to align 6 different creative ads with. So 4 banners and 2 social ads. So 1 Facebook, 1 LinkedIn. So obviously there's a lot of different design that goes within that. So we do have an ad modification program that if your team, your internal team is strapped with bandwidth, if they create kind of a template, we're able to take that, modify it with your approved your approved ad creative, your approved visuals, and build out those other ad variations for you. So really kind of great resource that we offer, and that's included in the cost of Launchpad. Perfect. So once our program is ramped up, how many waves of content are in a typical stream? So great question there. I think that, it really depends on a couple of things. So it depends on what's your contact tier, how many people do you have currently, how long do you want to keep someone in nurture. But I'd say out of the gate, we want to have at least 3 to 4 content pieces within that wave. And then from there, if it's a high priority audience group, we can keep them in nurture for much longer, because if they're really important to you, we want to give them the right time to get in front of them or kind of take them through the messages that you'd like to. Perfect. So if there aren't any other questions, then I think we'll kind of end it at that for today. So we'll give the last couple of a chance to ask questions while we have the time. But if no one has any other questions, I think that, as Cass mentioned, we'll send out a link to this deck so you can kind of take a closer look, as well as have those helpful links for the Help Center articles. And obviously feel free to reach out to your marketing automation consultant directly on anything that we discussed today, or your account manager, your account team there. Thanks again, everyone, for joining, and hopefully talk soon.